Consensus Network.
I think the most powerful way to understand Bitcoin is to actually to be able to experience it and to use it. And that's what's great about Fountain. You know, you can go from never having heard about Bitcoin, just being interested in podcasts. One of your friends says to you, hey, download Fountain. You can earn some Bitcoin for listening. You go and listen to a podcast, you earn some Bitcoin. You're like, okay, what can I do with this? I can either tip other people on the platform by sending them sats with likes. I can go and support a podcast, send them a boost. And finally, you can see that like, this is not just an asset that you have to hold on to forever and hodl. Like it's actually something that works as money.
Welcome back to the Freedom Footprint Show, a Bitcoin philosophy show with Knut Svanholm and me, Luke the PseudoFinn. Today we welcome Nick Malster, co-founder of Fountain, a value-for-value podcasting app powered by the Lightning Network. Today we take a peek behind the scenes at Fountain, how it all started and all the exciting things coming in the future for creators and listeners. We discuss podcasting 2.0, modern content industries versus value for value, the future of monetization, and more. And what a better episode to remind you that the best way to support the show is to send us a boost or stream us some sats using a value for value podcasting app. If you listen to this show as a podcast, check it out on Fountain. You can earn sats from listening to your favorite shows, and you can show your support through value for value. So check out Fountain today. And before we dive in, we have an announcement. We're hosting a live stream celebration for Bitcoin Infinity Day 2023, which is also the podcast's first birthday. On August 21st, 8/21, we'll be streaming live from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. CET. That's 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. EST. We have a boating accident load of guests. You won't want to miss it. We'll be streaming from the Consensus Network YouTube channel and our Twitter page. Be sure to follow those so you don't miss it. Bitcoin is for everyone, and Bitcoin Infinity Day is a celebration of Bitcoin's infinite potential. So we hope you join us for the stream and that you celebrate it somehow in your own way. Finally, we want to thank today's sponsors: Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill app, and bitcoinbook.shop. All their information is in the description. We'll be talking a little bit more about them later. And now, without further ado, here is Nick Malster on the Freedom Footprint Show.
Nick, welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot for having me on, guys. Oh, can we do that again? I just messed up on the first line.
Well, go ahead. Just say it again then. Or you know we're keeping all of it in, right?
Oh, no, don't do this to me, guys. Nick, welcome to the Freedom Footprint Show. Thanks for joining us. Thanks a lot for having me on, guys.
Yeah, good to have you here, Nick. You're from Fountain app.
Indeed. Yeah, so I'm the co-founder of Fountain. For those of you that don't know, it's a podcast app powered by the Bitcoin Lightning Network. It adopts the values for value ethos, whereby if we receive value from what we're listening to, we can send some value back, and Bitcoin is the perfect way to enable that.
Yeah, Fountain app is fantastic. We've both been using it for quite some time now, and recently we started collaborating even further with the Freedom Footprint Show and Fountain, and we're really pumped about the whole value for value movement. So can you give us a short background on yourself and on Fountain, and maybe on we can get into the juicy stuff about value for value and what it enables and where it's headed after that?
Sure, yeah. So I'm based in London. Me and my co-founder, Oscar, we actually went to school together. We've known each other a long time. And we both had different backgrounds. You know, he was in tech and consultancy. He had his own app studio before starting Fountain, making voice apps for Alexa, etc. And I was in advertising and then sort of client-side brand marketing at Nike, Adidas, big companies like that. And it was really in lockdown where, you know, I guess we'd always said that we wanted to do something together. We just didn't have the right idea at the right time. And we got lucky, really. In lockdown, we started meeting up and talking about this new side project he'd been working on, which was not a podcast app. Bitcoin was not a part of the experience at all. It was an app where you could just share essentially, you know, short voice notes and share them with other people and that kind of thing. So we were both really passionate about podcasts and always had been. And it was around that time where we were just watching what was happening with podcasting 2.0. The launch of Podcast Index, the value for value specification. And for us, it just seemed like a no-brainer, actually being able to use an existing library of content versus having to build up our own just made total sense. And then using payments, using Bitcoin to power that experience and show support and be able to drive discovery, just made total sense. But yeah, I guess back then, this was maybe 2020, early 2021, value for value was, and still is very early. So we were, I guess, at the forefront of that, right behind Adam and the other apps that were excitedly integrating this new specification into their products. And it's come along a whole way since.
Yeah. So how is how does the curve new users curve look like for Fountain? Like what does it look like? Are you growing exponentially? What's going on? Or is it organic, or what does the future have installed in terms of users?
Yeah, well, we think value for value is a concept that can really challenge the mainstream, because we look at the monetization models of the internet at large, the different apps, streaming services in particular. They're not serving the creators or the listeners. So we do believe there's a lot of potential long-term to capture mass market. At the beginning, of course, it was, small, humble beginnings. User numbers are small. It was really just people with a niche interest in Bitcoin or the technology surrounding it that makes this stuff possible, who are, I guess, just experimenting and figuring out the edges of this thing. And so, at the beginning, it was just a handful of podcasters, a handful of listeners. And it's grown in momentum. I think the inflection point for us was last summer, because I guess we took a risk of actually saying, value for value works the other way around as well. It doesn't have to be just the listener supporting the creator to return the value. We recognize that actually the listeners provide a lot of value as well, because on Fountain, you can send a boost and other people then see that in their feed and they're like, okay, cool. I'm going to go and check out what Knut's been listening to and go and listen to that episode. And, if you've helped me discover a podcast, I might want to tip you and say, hey, thanks. Or if you've made a clip and guided me to a really great part of a podcast you've been listening to, again, same thing. And so, giving the listener the incentive or the ability to be able to earn as well through the app was a game changer. And the other thing we did there was listen to earn. So you can earn sats simply by listening to podcasts. So that was the inflection point for us. We saw really strong growth from that point. And we continue to see strong growth today. There's definitely, some barriers that we're trying to break down, not, ourselves, but as a community of builders. We can't do this alone. This is an open ecosystem of developers. And that's the great thing about Bitcoin, is that you have apps that can finally talk to each other and share information. And we have to work together to essentially tackle the big powers of Spotify and Apple, who have been running the show so far. So I suppose in terms of what the barriers are, I guess the main thing is the RSS feed. That's a huge barrier. It's obviously been an amazing protocol to build on over the years, and it's been part of the success of podcasting's proliferation and mainstream adoption. But again, this is really why podcasting 2.0, Adam and Dave's projects really built momentum, is because they realized that RSS specification was outdated and it wasn't supporting new features that could work in an interoperable way across different apps, different devices. So I think that challenge is that a lot of these new features that have come about through podcasting 2.0, like chapters and transcripts and these types of things, they have to be supported by the hosts, the podcast hosts. And, Fountain is not a podcast host ourselves. We cannot publish RSS feeds. You launch your podcast on another platform like RSS.com or Blueberry or Buzzsprout, even Anchor. And we ingest your feed. You can claim your show, and then we're a tool, really. But, unless the podcaster has the ability to be able to control their RSS feed and add things like chapters, etc., the experience is going to be limited. So that's one thing. And I suppose the other thing too is just is the Bitcoin aspect. we are Bitcoiners ourselves, so we know and understand this world really well, and a lot of the users we have currently are Bitcoiners. They already have sats in a Lightning wallet somewhere. They can top up really easily. The value for value concept or theory just makes sense to them, and they can already support a lot of their favorite Bitcoin podcasts because those were the early pioneers or the early adopters. I guess really the challenge is to how do we open the aperture and let more people in? And I think that if you first download an app and the first thing you see is the word sats everywhere, you're like, what's going on? So I think that's the other thing too, is just trying to make things more accessible, still using Bitcoin as the payment rail that provides the experience, but making it, I guess more welcoming for non-Bitcoiners.
All right. So how is the price of Bitcoin connected to how many users you onboard? I mean, you haven't really seen a 10x bull market yet since you started, but what are you expecting from that? And like, how does that relate to the number of users Fountain has?
Yeah, this is a question I always get asked. You know what? The inflection point I spoke about last summer when we launched Listen to Earn and the incentive for users, for listeners to be able to earn sats. At that point, price of Bitcoin was up, and up. And there was really great momentum. And, the only news stories about Bitcoin were positive ones. And there was a lot of optimism. Of course, we know there's always optimism, but people who just follow the price of Bitcoin get sidetracked. So when we launched out, I think, that definitely helped us out quite a lot because it was at the right time, for Bitcoin price going up, people feeling really excited about the wealth generation opportunities more than anything else. But even in this bull market, we haven't seen a huge tail off in users. There's still been interest. And I think that, I suppose that, when Bitcoin's at a lower price compared to the dollar, the sats you're sending to the podcast are cheaper. So actually, we see more support in a bull market because sats are more precious when the dollar valuation is high. But it remains to be seen. I think if we get into the territory of like 10x growth, I think we'll see something amazing.
Yeah, but I guess there's like things that are adjacent to Bitcoin and aren't Bitcoin itself. Are more like Fountain is an app for, first and foremost, for Bitcoiners who are already there, already orange pilled and already using the Lightning Network, I guess. So, as you say, when the price drops, the number of Fountain users doesn't necessarily drop with it. Then again, in a bull run, more real Bitcoiners are created in every bull run. So we'll just have to wait and see that. And the thing, what I'm so excited about a potential bull run, I mean, I'm arguably even more excited for a bear market because that means cheaper sats. But when the bull market eventually ensues and we've used this bear market to build all these synergies between all these companies, like it feels like this bear market has really opened up the idea that Bitcoin companies have everything to gain from collaborating and not just competing with one another, but finding these synergies. And I see it everywhere. Like consensus is connected to so many other things in Bitcoin at this point, including Fountain, of course. And I bet you see a lot of that too. And there's a lot to look forward to if you have skin in the game.
For sure. I think, one of the other great gifts of this bear market has been Nostr. This is when these things get built, and this is the time where these types of protocols, can be used to drive progress for the developers and work together. And I think that's one thing that we're really excited about too, because, I think that's the great thing about building on protocols is that you have apps that can talk to each other. If a listener on another podcasting 2.0 app like Cast-O-Matic who sent a boost on Cast-O-Matic, that boost also appears in Fountain because we're able to see, the recipient in the value block. We can bring that over to Fountain and we can show the comment there. And I think what we are missing now is like the replies. So you can actually interact across the different apps too. And I think what you'll see from us fairly soon, maybe even by the time this podcast is out, is more integrations with Nostr, which allow us to have interactivity across different apps. And that's really exciting. Cross-app comments has never been solved. And, even if you look at a platform like Spotify, they themselves don't have a comment system. I guess maybe they're too afraid of, the moderation considerations of, free speech and everything like that. But, finally being able to have, no walled gardens and just have conversations, regardless of which app you're listening on, being able to talk to listeners on another app and interact together. That's really exciting.
So what other things could potentially be protocols instead of programs? Like, where are we going with this thing? Have you thought about that?
Well, I suppose, the two most important ones for us right now are RSS and Lightning. And those two in combination just, it makes complete sense. Nostr being the other one that we're going to be starting to lead into a little bit more. Who knows what comes down the line, but I think for us, it's really important. Like I said before, collaboration is key to this. This is a big challenge we have on our hands to take value for value mainstream, and we have to work together. And the best way to work together is by building interoperable tech or building on top of interoperable tech.
Today's show is brought to you by our sponsors. First up, Orange Pill app. Stack friends who stack sats, meet like-minded Bitcoiners near you, and help speed up hyper-Bitcoinization with Orange Pill app. Bitcoin isn't an online-only phenomenon, and Orange Pill app helps facilitate the social layer, connecting Bitcoiners in their local area. It maintains your privacy through the whole process, and since you have to pay to access the app, you know that everyone there cares about Bitcoin and is high signal. A great new feature is events. You can create events and meetups right from the Orange Pill app and help build your local community while maintaining the Bitcoin-only signal. Orange Pill app is available on iOS and Android. Download now. Next up, Wasabi Wallet, an open-source, non-custodial desktop wallet that is trustless, easy to use, and affordable. It has CoinJoin built in to facilitate your privacy. Every Bitcoin transaction leaves a clear footprint, but with Wasabi, you can make sure that others can't track your steps and threaten your sovereignty. Just send your coins to Wasabi Wallet, wait, and your coins will be private on the other end. It's open source, trustless by design, and non-custodial. You have full control over your keys. Check it out now at wasabiwallet.io.
Luke, do you have a question for Nick?
Sure. Maybe can you take us through a little bit of your Bitcoin journey and how you got to understand the value of Bitcoin and the tie into value for value?
Yeah. So I guess the first time I heard about Bitcoin was fairly late in Bitcoiner standards. It was around 2017. I think it must have been my co-founder, Oscar, who was saying to me, "Hey, have you checked out Bitcoin?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what's that?" I only really saw it as, I guess, magic internet money. Something that has some indeterminable value in the future. I wasn't interested in the monetary philosophy behind it. And that stayed, that remained that way for a long time. And then we got to, some of the bull markets in sort of, the late, so just before 2020, and my interest peaked, and I was like, maybe I should be paying attention to this, and started speaking to a little bit more to Oscar about this. He lent me a book, The Bitcoin Standard, and that was really the thing for me which ignited my journey. I read the whole thing back to back when I was on holiday, and finally I realized that, this is not just crypto token. This is actually a whole philosophy. And actually you can see how, once you can fix the money, you can fix the world. And it's really exciting now to consider myself a Bitcoiner as well, because it's just an access to a completely new community that I didn't have before. It was funny because I bought my first Bitcoin in, I think it must have been 2020. And either later on that year or early the following year, I started a Bitcoin company. So it happened really quickly. So, we all have so much learning to do, but I had a lot to do really quickly because I had a responsibility to be able to deliver something of value to Bitcoiners.
But that's fantastic. I hear that type of story more and more, that people just, discover it and instantly get it and start working on something. I think that's becoming more and more common, and that might be because the information about it is more accessible now. And it's more obvious that the other crypto tokens, quote unquote, crypto tokens, are just shit. So I think once you see it, you can't unsee it. There's no un-orange pilling people. It's a one way thing for sure.
I think the most powerful way to understand Bitcoin is to actually to be able to experience it and to use it. And that's what's great about Fountain. You know, you can go from never having heard about Bitcoin, just being interested in podcasts. One of your friends says to you, hey, download Fountain. You can earn some Bitcoin for listening. You go and listen to a podcast, you earn some Bitcoin. You're like, okay, what can I do with this? I can either tip other people on the platform by sending them sats with likes. I can go and support a podcast, send them a boost. And finally, you can see that like, this is not just an asset that you have to hold on to forever and hodl. Like it's actually something that works as money. And, you know, it's not something you can only spend on, the dark net, the dark web. It's something that you can use, thousands of apps around the world already today and transact with it in ways that were never before possible. For me, seeing money being streamed from one person to another in real time was a game changer. And then when I realized, actually, I'm not streaming money to one person. If I'm streaming money to a podcast, I'm sending money to the host, their co-hosts, their guests, maybe RHF fund, open sats, maybe even some of their listeners. So there's a whole plethora of different people that I'm broadcasting this money out to. And you look at that and you're like, wow, I mean, fiat can't do that.
No, this is like one way to look at it is electronics as compared to just electrics. It's like whenever the logic gate was created, a whole new world was opened up and we could create computers and stuff. And I see that now we have truth gates. It's like we have a way of constructing absolutely true logic gates where people can, it's akin to a plumbing system even. The streams of sats going, who knows what we will build when we have that. I think we just barely scratched the surface of what this thing can do in the long run.
Yeah. I mean, I think looking at music is a really good example. Fountain doesn't have full support for music yet, but it will do soon. So you'll be able to, any music that's been added to an RSS feed, you'll be able to find it in Fountain. It'll be labeled a track or an album. And obviously you can stream stats and boost stats to the artist as well. Now, if you look at the way Spotify works, their royalty system, it's opaque. No one really understands how it works. The listener just knows they're paying $10 a month to Spotify. And then whatever Spotify do with their money, that's kind of up to them. But you don't know how much of it goes to the artist. I believe it's around 2/3 goes to the artist, but it's not even necessarily the artist that you listen to. It gets put into a centralized pot for each country. And depending on, it's a pro rata system, the total number of streams in that country, the money is then divided across all those artists. So that it means that in the UK, even if you weren't listening to Taylor Swift, some of your money is going to Taylor Swift. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why can't it be direct? Why can't the money that I'm sending go directly to the artist I'm listening to? I think SoundCloud do this slightly differently. They actually split the royalties based on the artist you listen to if you're paying a premium subscription. But this is where value for value comes in because, it's a out the box, digital musical royalty system that it works. You can split money to the label, to the distributor, to the lead singer, to the drummer, to the bassist. Everyone gets their share and it's totally transparent.
Yeah. But Bitcoin doesn't incentivize rent seeking. It does the opposite. It enables us to go directly to the source. Because when you say 2/3 go to the artist, that means 2/3 goes to the record or the bank disguised as a record label that gave the artist who thought they were going to get world famous when they were 18 a shitty loan to promote them. And so that's where most of the money goes, I guess. But this is, it's a completely different beast. And I think when you look at these things historically about how artists and the likes of artists, the authors, for instance, or filmmakers, how they were financed, I think the 20th century really is the anomaly. And whatever came before, whatever is coming after is going to be more similar to what came before the 20th century. Because it was only during the 20th century that you could make a profit from selling copies of stuff. And value for value is more like, oh, I heard this song you wrote, I can instantly stream you sats. That's a much fairer way, because there's no physical. Most of the 20th century, there were physical things involved, like LPs or CDs or stuff, which weren't really like, you weren't really buying the thing, you were buying the intellectual thing that was on the thing. And whenever computers took over, the necessity for stuff goes away. So you're left with this strange world where copyright laws don't really make any sense anymore, because intellectual property is bullshit anyway. And it's Bitcoin has sort of illuminated that fact further. And yeah, looking forward to what's going to happen to all these, especially to the rent seekers, because they don't have a business model any longer. If you try to predict the future 20 years down the line here, who's going to need a record label? Like, you could need a manager to but that would be more akin to a secretary or something, like more like what people had in the 50s and 60s than whatever abomination the record label came to be in the late 20th century.
For sure. I mean, it returns, sovereignty and independence to the creator, which has been missing. And I think that, if you look at creators, let's look at a podcaster, for example, they're really beholden to, the people that are propping up their business model, which is usually advertisers. And there's nothing wrong with advertising per se. It's just the indirect flow of money means that, the podcast is receiving money from the advertiser, and the listener gets it for free. But is it really free if you have to pay with your time and attention? And, giving the creators the ability to be able to say, actually, I'm not going to have advertising. I'm just going to rely solely on my listeners and make that value exchange direct. It simplifies it, but it also means that you're not having to, censor yourself or moderate your own content based on what the advertiser wants to see or what your sponsor wants to see.
Yeah, and the important point to make there is that this is not binary. I mean, you could do a bit of both, and there's nothing wrong with that. So you could choose to just advertise a few companies that you really, really like, and then do the rest value. The point being that the artist or the podcaster has a lot more options of how to finance whatever they do, especially if numbers go up.
Yeah, well, I think, talking of numbers go up, I think that's, value for value still hasn't proven itself to be able to replace the money that advertising generates. We're still early in that respect. We need to be able to make it easier for people to onboard to apps like Fountain to get started. There's a whole load of things, barriers we need to break down. But we believe that it will get there in the future. And I think that as well, I think there's a way, another monetization tool that's used by creators as well is subscriptions, which makes sense because as a creator, you have a recurring income. You guarantee that, okay, I've got 200 supporters. I'm getting $5 from each of them this month. Great. I've got $1,000 every month and you can rely on that. And as a creator, you have fixed costs. You've got to pay for your hosting. You've got to pay for your studio rent, whatever those costs are. The value for value it goes up and down. It really depends on the support that's pledged that week. So yeah, that's also something we're interested in too. And is there a way that we can do value for value in a way, subscriptions in a way that is within the value for value ethos? Because if you look at something like Patreon, it inherently actually devalues the art the creator makes, because what it says to the creator is, if you want to charge $5 or $10 a month to your audience, you have to do an Ask Me Anything. You have to do behind the scenes content. You have to manage a Discord channel. You have to do all this extra stuff. And it's almost like you're trying to justify the cost. what if the listener just wants to be able to support you because they love you and they want to help you grow and help you reach more listeners? Isn't that enough? So, that's going to be really interesting to see, because I think that, Patreon are kind of taking creators for a ride there. You end up getting so distracted by this additional stuff you have to do that your focus gets taken away on just creating value for your audience, which is really your primary purpose.
Absolutely. But I think the value for value part of the total sum of money that goes to artists and podcasters will grow as Bitcoin grows, because like when you become orange pill, when you first buy Bitcoin, you buy a little, and then you think or earn Bitcoin. You start small and then you become obsessed and addicted, and like the first thing you say is like you hear this advice that you should never have more than you are willing to lose. But that flips and turns on its head. Like, you shouldn't keep more fiat than you're willing to lose, because you're absolutely going to lose it. Like, there's no way of not losing it. But with the Bitcoin, it's the other way around. So as Bitcoiners' mindset shifts, I think that's going to shift their mindset around the value for value thing too, because it's so closely related. What are your thoughts around that?
I suppose, kind of go back to what I said before, is like seeing Bitcoin as something that you can give and receive. Yeah, it's not something you have to hold on to forever. It has utility as money, and I think that the narrative, I suppose, in the broader crypto space is that crypto is something that you hold just to be able to get rich, and I think that we're slowly breaking down the idea as this ecosystem of products and services is built on top of it. And of course, here you have your equivalent of your savings account for Bitcoin, and you'll have the equivalent of your current account for Bitcoin. And I think it's when people start to get more comfortable with having a current account effectively for their Bitcoin, which they're going to spend and use, that's when this thing takes off.
Spend and replace comes to mind. That's the mindset you should have, because you shouldn't really dilute your stack. That's a very good point to hodling as well. But as long as you spend and replace, you're fine. What is it that our friend Peter Dunworth says? If you have one Satoshi more this year than last year, you're a winner. Like, obviously. So that's your goal. Just have one more Satoshi each year and you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think, and the way we actually got the name Fountain, apart from being, fountain of knowledge and wisdom, etc., is also just because a fountain it's a circular system. And it's the idea that you can give sats away, but you're going to receive some the next day. It's a model that just keeps going round and round. And, your balance can replenish itself by supporting, but then also curating and sharing content, getting tips from there. It's an economy in its own self. And I think that's what's really cool about it.
Absolutely. Luke, are you thinking of something?
Yeah, but my questions come down to a little bit of the technical side, pulling a little bit of the I don't know, mask off or something like that. I do the production for Freedom Footprint and for Consensus generally, and I have really liked that kind of recently there's been a focus on building up the tools for podcast creators. Maybe can you walk us through a little bit about some of the things you have? I know you've mentioned some of them, but some of the things you have coming to, well, just enhance Fountain. What's on the roadmap?
Yeah, I think the top priority for us really is giving the creators the amazing experience, because I think so far we've been very focused on attracting listeners, and Fountain going out to a listener who's very fickle and needs a really good reason to stop using Spotify. Us telling them that is not going to carry the same weight as the podcaster saying, hey guys, come and listen to my podcast on Fountain, support me there, help me grow my show, help me build the community, like engage with other fans. If they can deliver that message, it's so much more powerful. So we're investing a lot in, more kind of tools and technology that can help the creator, give them what they need to be able to start talking to their listeners about value for value, and start to really monitor and measure the impact that value for value has on, their download numbers, but the engagement, but also their income. So we have a dashboard launching soon on web, which is going to, I suppose, is the first step towards giving creators the same type of control you'd expect from a dashboard on something like Patreon or even something like Twitter, where you can manage your inbox and reply to people. And so that functionality is coming really soon. We're also beyond that, just doing quite a major UX and UI overhaul. It's been much needed. Like a lot of the stuff we've been doing to date has just been designed very quickly in Figma ourselves, or it's been designed in development. Just because we want to get stuff out there quickly. We want to iterate, we want to get feedback and just really see what sticks. And we think we've got something that's starting to work here now. And it's the time to really start polishing it. I guess that if you look at Fountain, we kind of draw inspiration from 3 different sources. You've got, fundamentally, we're a podcast app. Now, there's obviously loads of music streaming players, podcast players out there that have invested millions into, research, design, development. We don't have to reinvent the wheel there. We just have to deliver the same standard, if not better than the others. And then the other thing is the social layer. And like we've seen yesterday, Threads just went and ripped off Twitter. Like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. These things work already. And then the final thing is the wallet, which is, all of us really use wallets as Bitcoiners, but banking apps, everyone uses those. So it's about trying to really blend those 3 things together into, in the best way possible. That just makes complete sense, so that even someone with no Bitcoin experience can just pick it up and be like, right, I know what I'm doing here. I get the idea of this app. So that's another thing. And then, I think the other thing too is just focusing on, adopting more of these podcasting 2.0 features and really showing like what they can do. There's a really interesting conversation happening at the moment in podcasting 2.0 around value time splits, which is obviously with a podcast, there's value enabled. You can have a split, like I mentioned before. You can direct payments to the show host, the guest, the listeners, and how this works is it's like a dynamic split. So that, let's say if you were playing a podcast episode and you wanted to include a piece of music, which was part of an open library on RSS. And when you switched over to that song, the splits would actually change as well. So anyone streaming sats to the podcast episode or sending a boost while that song's playing, the money goes to the artist. And that's really powerful. It gives you the ability to essentially create like a radio show whereby as you're listening, you're supporting each of the artists that are played. So that's really cool. Things like that we're going to be focusing on a lot.
Like the opposite of a CBDC. Like it has the same programmability, but for each and every user, and no one can stop it.
Right.
So get on Fountain, kids. I mean, Fountain and other value for value platforms and Consensus and Noster. We are the rebels, and Apple, Amazon, Spotify, whatever. They are the galactic empire. And the Zaps are the photon torpedoes aimed at the Death Star's thermal exhaust port. So this is how we get there. We have to remember that we're a small resistance guerrilla group that are fighting the biggest forces in the world here. But it's a fun fight to fight, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like there's always new forces at play. I mean, obviously, another one of the big forces is the app stores, and as we've seen recently. A lot of conversation around Zaps and whether they should be, permitted by Apple. That's another interesting thing that's going to be playing out quite soon, because ultimately the app stores are seeing this new model emerge, and they're thinking, well, where's our cut? And there's so many challenges and blockers to this, and that's why we have to work together.
Yeah, and that's a tricky one, because we've become so dependent on these app stores, like the App Store and Google Play Store first and foremost. But we shouldn't be. Like, software should be available to all. Like it's just code, it's just numbers. So I guess we need to put our money where our mouths are, even when it comes to app stores. If Apple is deciding on banning Zaps for a long time, well, don't use Apple products then. It's easier to say than do, because a lot of people do only Apple. But this is like, the free market needs to play out here, and we need to choose ethically. Like, what kind of future do we want for ourselves? Do we want one where we are in control, or do we want these giant conglomerates that can be, influenced by politicians? Do we want them to win, or do we want the rebels to win?
Yeah, I really do think that value for value is it's like a plant that's always going to grow to find the light, find the sun. There's going to be these challenges that things that are trying to trip us up, but we'll find a way. There's ways around these things.
Absolutely, and we're building them all the time. And Orange Pill app, for instance, you can zap people there now, and whenever you make connections with Bitcoiners in real life, you can just have, if you both have a Lightning wallet, you can zap one another. Like, it's that simple. It's just these apps are just helping that future become a reality. And as you say, I think it's an asphalt flower too. Like, it is unstoppable, because the idea is so much better than the old world ideas, like the clown world ideas. This makes way more sense.
The show is also sponsored by BitcoinBook.shop, the Bitcoin-only bookstore by Consensus Network. Consensus specializes in translations of Bitcoin books and also publishes original titles in English and many other languages. Check out BitcoinBook.shop for all your Bitcoin book needs. Consensus is always looking for new contributors, whether you have a book you want to publish, you want to help translate books into your native language, or you have some other way you want to get involved. So if you want to help spread the Bitcoin message, reach out to Consensus Network by Twitter or email. Details are in the show notes.
Hey, Nick, do you have anything else to add? Anything else you'd like to say about Fountain, value for value, anything?
No, I don't think so. I guess just if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, maybe think about downloading Fountain. Go to fountain.fm and download the app. Load it up with some sats, listen to podcasts and some sats, and support this show. I think these guys are already on Fountain, using it regularly. You can send a boost. Luke and Knut will see the boost. They'll respond to the boost. It's a great way to get direct access to them, which is something you can't do on these other apps. And check it out, and keep an eye out for some of the updates that are coming out in the next couple of months. There's some really exciting stuff.
Yeah, we certainly will. Our eyes are peeled, or whatever the expression is.
Excellent. Well, I think with that, thanks for coming on the Freedom Footprint Show, Nick. It's been great to hear more about yourself and about Fountain. And just echo all the same things. Fountain has been great for us, and great user experience. So check it out if you haven't already.
Absolutely.
Thanks again, Nick.
Thank you.
What did you think of our conversation with Nick? It was great to hear about everything going on at Fountain, and it's definitely our favorite value for value podcasting app. Let us know what you thought about this episode. You can send us a boostagram on Fountain, leave us a comment on YouTube, or get in touch on Nostra or Twitter. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to like the episode and subscribe to the Consensus Network channel. Our show's sponsors are Wasabi Wallet, Orange Pill app, and BitcoinBook.shop. Use code FOOTPRINT at BitcoinBook.shop for 10% off your purchase. Don't forget that Bitcoin Infinity Day is coming up. We're streaming live on August 21st from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. CET. Hope to see you there. That's all for now. See you next time, and thanks for listening.